Phoenix flames burn so bright. Threats arise, they stand tall, defend the world, never fall. There are souls, they fight for free. No reward, no luxury. First up front, they lead the way. For the citizens, they stay. Phoenix initiative, never back down. In the darkness, lights found. Tireless warriors, shield to light. They are stronger with their fight. Reporting to the Emperor's court, strategies with wisdom brought. New threats fall to the ground. Phoenix voices make the sound. Phoenix initiative, never back down. In the darkness, lights found. Tireless warriors, shield to light. They're stronger with their fight. Reporting to the Emperor's court, strategies with wisdom brought. New threats fall to the ground. Phoenix voices make the sound. Phoenix initiative, never back down. In the darkness, lights found. Tireless warriors, shield to light. They're stronger with their fight. Silent guardians stand so true. In their hearts of fire new. Recognition never sought. Still they give all they've got. They're stronger with their fight. They're stronger with their fight. Phoenix! They're stronger with their fight. They're stronger with their fight. Phoenix initiative, never back down. In the darkness, lights found. Tireless warriors, shields of might. They're stronger with their fight. Reporting to the Emperor's court, strategies with wisdom brought. New threats fall to the ground. Phoenix voices make the sound. Phoenix forward with their fight. Silent guardians stand so true. In their hearts of fire new. Recognition never sought. Still they give all they've got. They're stronger with their fight. They're stronger with their fight. Silent guardians stand so. Heroes gather with a mission. I stand on Coffin Tower. Whispers of magic from the past. Ruins call with ancient power.
And welcome in, everybody. Dr. Phantom X, everyone. So this is going to be an interesting stream, everybody. I actually, one of you guys, one of the viewers actually was saying, hey, you should get one of the two doctors. So that would be Phantom X or Burns, on to talk about personality choice and class type, because I actually have a thought process that I go down for this. And Burns is more of a medical doctor, but from what I understand, and I will admit that there's a possibility that I haven't done all the research I need to do. You are either a psychiatrist or a psychologist, right? One of the two?
Most of my time's been in dementia care, end of life dementia care, end stage stuff. So,
Okay. End stage dementia care. Interesting. Okay,
now I teach people to be doctors.
Okay. Can you tell me the difference between psychiatry and psychology? Because I don't know.
Sure. I mean, that's a good question, because that happens all the time. So psychiatrists are going to be physicians, medical doctors, right? MDs. Psychology is typically going to be PhDs, although that even starts to spread a little bit more into like master's level, and depending on where you go with it, social work level and things like that. But the biggest thing is I've been through the whole, 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school, 4 years of residency, 30 years old before I had a job, because I was learning. So that's the biggest part. So as a physician, we prescribe meds and stuff like that, versus psychologists that we're going to be primarily interested in therapy, which we'll do a little bit as well. But.
Okay, that's interesting. I realized while I was sitting here thinking about how I was going to like introduce the show, I was like, you know what? They've just told me he's a doctor and he does something to do with it. I don't actually know. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to put him on the spot and ask him. So
that's all good.
So I messaged you and was just like, hey, people want to talk about this topic. Would you be interested? And it cracked me up that you were like, actually, yes, I'm really, really busy right now, and I don't have time to be messing around with this little YouTube Twitch project you got going on. I'd love to do it in a couple of weeks. I don't have time for you right now. And then message me an hour later, and you're like, I'm so interested in this project. I've already started pulling research papers and reading them. So it's like, you didn't have time, but you were definitely interested.
It's an interesting question. I mean, it's a super interesting question. Hand in hand, there's a lot of intermixing of personalities and mental health, behavioral health on video games. Like they mix a ton. Mm-hmm. There's tons of research coming about. So this was one that I hadn't really thought about. Mm-hmm. And so that's where straight to either PubMed or Google Scholar, start typing in some words, see what I can find. But yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting rabbit hole.
Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here. I want you to answer in one word. Okay, just one word, because we're gonna unpack all this as we go along. But just in one word, does personality type affect your class choice in MMOs?
Yes.
Okay.
I would say yes.
Okay, so I'm going to lay out for you my thought process on my own personality and my own class choice that I go with. Okay, so I want you to. This is dime store psychology. I got my psychology degree out of a Cracker Jack box, which is an old reference that half our audience won't even get.
I know. I get it.
Okay, so I detest rogue gameplay, just in general. Okay, I am a extremely direct, blunt person. I say what is on my mind. I don't beat around the bush. I don't go around the corner. I'm not stealthing and trying to jump out of the corner and surprise you with what I want to say. I'm going to tell you what I want to say directly and in front of you. And so my gameplay, I find, like I almost always want to play like an armored knight, like a tank. Like I want to stand in front of you and be like, this is what I'm going to do. Counter it with your best move or whatever. And I literally have like a physical detest of rogue gameplay. Like it's mealy mouth. Mm-hmm. Like I'm not going to tell you what I'm really going to do. I'm going to surprise you, like that sort of thing. So in my opinion, my dime store opinion, I pick those types of more like direct in your face classes because my personality is more direct and in your face and not trying to like beat around the bush. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. You're going to pick something that you're comfortable with. And if that is, you want to be out front leading, this is me, this is what we're doing, then yeah, you're going to be that tank player. I mean, that makes sense. I tend to play a cleric in most things. I mean, spent my life as a physician and just happen to play clerics. Yeah. We play what we're comfortable with.
Sure.
So I think you're right. It's interesting. There's the easiest way to put this is there's not a lot of research on this,
Right.
specific to class selection.
Hmm.
So it's kind of hard to find anything, but connecting the dots, it makes sense. My mind is pretty straightforward. If things just make sense, I go to what makes sense first before I go into like rabbit holes that, it's like what we call red herrings. And it makes sense that you're going to play a character that sort of fits what you're comfortable with.
Hmm.
That's going to vary per people, but it fits. Diggs yesterday, for our show Theory Forge, Diggs was talking about how he's going to play now, and it's all about the bard.
Okay.
Well, he dances. He's a huge dancer. That's like all he does with his life is dance.
Really?
It fits. So yes, you wouldn't know
Okay.
that about him, but yes, he's actually really good. So yeah, I think we are driven towards what we're comfortable with, but that's not the end all be all. Certainly people have you have people that like to have alts of all sorts. So it's not so simple as
Mm-hmm.
I don't think as your personality says whether you are a tank or a fighter or a cleric or a ranger, but there's things that point that way.
Okay.
So
Okay. I just want to real quick. Eraj, thank you for the sub, and somebody else I think followed. Oh, AV Gaming subscribed when he came in. So AV, thank you for the sub too, man. I appreciate it. Osiris the Weary actually jumped in with a question that's very similar to where I was going to go next. And where he said, would role selection make more sense personality wise instead of class? And so that's what I was going to ask you is, can you break this down in a little bit easier form of saying tank, DPS, healer, and maybe support as like a fourth like outlier, because I think a lot less people are interested in that type of role.
Yeah, so when you start looking into kind of research on this, one, it's just really hard to find anything because most of gaming research within behavioral aspects, personality aspects, is going to be in either violence in gaming or gaming addiction. So that's what really clouds the space. So it's really hard to sort of get things that have been really nailed down within these sorts of questions. But luckily, MMORPG, specifically World of Warcraft, has been studied quite a bit. Yes, roles would matter more. And that's why I think that's where you're going to... there's a lot of different ways when you look in the literature to sort of look at this. I mentioned the Bartle score. That's something that was developed, a gentleman with the last name Bartle, who created a MUD many, many years ago. Kind of came up with four characteristics.
Because we have younger people in the audience, MUD would be multi-user dungeon, and it's like a neo prototype of MMOs. It's before MMOs. Usually they were not graphical at all. It just FYI, when he says MUD, he means multi-user dungeon. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, the precursor to what we now know as MMOs.
Yes.
And so he sort of, that's where things kind of really first started with looking at explorers and killers and sort of defining how we behave. It's probably more behavior than class selection. I think I saw some people in chat mentioning some Myers-Briggs scores as well.
Yeah.
But that's, when you actually get into literature, they look at different stuff. There's something called the Big Five personality.
I like the Big Five personality model personally.
Yeah, and then the others, letters for hexaco is, I guess, what you could call it. But those are actually the two models that you look into. And so roles, yes, they have started looking at roles. Actually, you mentioned support. Nobody wants to play. One of the things that has come from looking through this, actually, support does tend to, okay, where did I write it down? Be more pro-social, actually, is what they have found. So your roles within the group are definitely going to be determined by your personality. Are you a leader? Are you extroverted, right? So that's one of the big five is extroversion. They tend to be very confident. They like to lead. So that's going to be your shot caller within your raids, within your guild, probably with, your guild leaders, guild officers. Your healers are going to be more sort of the kind of what they would call agreeableness or sort of caring and nurturing. People that are sort of on the positive side of that tend to go healer. You mentioned rogues. One of the other concepts is neuroticism. So basically, how do you handle susceptibility to worry and anxiety and anger and stuff like that? Rogues are going to fit sort of in that area. So your roles are going to be more influenced by your personality than probably your class
than your class
choice.
specifically.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I had a feeling that was going to be the case just based on my own observation, observing my world. I've been not only was I a guild leader, but I was a guild leader of a high-end progression rating guild. So like I was seeing these personalities, like it's almost impossible to find like a top tier big dick badass DPS who's not an asshole. Like it goes hand in hand. Like I don't understand that. I mean, I guess I do understand it, but because it's that competitiveness, that competitive drive, which is actually agreeableness, which is actually disagreeableness in their case in a lot of ways. And so they're just like they got that competitive edge and they want to be better than you. And I think what I find interesting is that it's like not only do they want to be better than you, they want to be better than you and for you to know it. And there's something to that.
Yeah, no, there's little parts to this. Again, it's just something that's not super well explored at this point. But it's funny you mentioned that because one of the things I was reading was commenting on time spent playing and sort of what do you see personality wise. So sort of casual players versus hardcore. I think they kind of broke it more into daily players versus non-daily players. But in my mind, when you're that top DPS person, that's probably someone that has invested a lot of time, that plays regularly. Sort of a hardcore player. It doesn't have to be, but can be. But interestingly, when you say that, because they do tend to have that sort of personality type, so they're less, they are not the extroverted sort of excitement. This bubbly person to be around. They're also, they're not the sort of conscientious person that's responsible and steps forward. And they do tend to be more. In this study, it commented daily gamers were more sort of entitled and yes, I'm in your face, I am the best type of person. So your observations do seem to hold up with what's there.
Okay. So let's get into healing a little bit here. Because I've found healing is the one to me, for my personal opinion, healing is the place where this breaks down a little bit, this personality thing. So I find that there are three main types of healers. One is girls. Not always, but a lot of girls choose to play healing, and I think it's the nature and the caring and the agreeableness and all that stuff. Okay. You have boys who are doctors in real life, like you and Burns, and I've known several others. And then disaffected former tanks, like people who got sick of I don't know, the responsibility or the fact that they're always counting on other people to do their role in order for their role to be fulfilled or something, and they just go, fuck it, I'm just gonna go be a healer. And so like to me there's almost no like defining characteristic that says this person would typically choose a healer. It's like this kind of weird conglomeration of several different character types or personality types.
Yeah. And I think you're going to find that in a lot of things too. So, I should step back and saying that, it is not a lot of sort of research that's out there about this, and what is out there is not necessarily a ton as far as looking at numbers of people. Right. And so the more people you can put in a study, the better your power, the more likely it is true. Some of these things have like 12 people, 20 people. That's pretty small.
Yeah.
The other part to this is a lot of it is self-reporting. So, that's not the best sort of way to try to gather data when you're looking at science evidence, but it's really all that exists in this area. But yeah, no, I think for that, for sure. Your healers, it also depends on, there's also a pretty clear split on goals, like PvP players versus PvE players. And I think that will also sort of start to divide up your personality types, including some of these different classes as well. But yeah, I agree. It is that sort of the altruism, the taking care of people, being able to sort of take it upon yourself. It's a sort of isolated thing as well. You're not having to worry about damage. You're kind of doing your own thing as well. So,
right. To me, the only appeal of being a healer over like, because I've done it. I mean, I've healed for like raid teams and stuff like that. Is almost the like I feel like you're like separate from the raid team. Like what they're all trying to do, they're trying to perform these mechanics. The tanks are calling things out in the DPS, and they're splitting off and they're interrupting this mechanic, they're doing all this stuff, and you're just like over here watching bars and making sure they keep going to the right instead of to the left. That's like the whole thing. So it's like it's almost like separate and above from the rest of the raid team. But of course, I am looking at that from the perspective of a PVE, a raiding player, not a healer. Because if you think about, I've had many conversations with Dr. Burns. Dr. Burns and I are good friends, and he's talked about like taking pride in making a build where everybody is chasing him because he's been such an effective healer that everybody wants to kill him, and he made a build that just like allowed him to string along numerous players so that his team's kicking your team's ass while you're over here chasing him or whatever. And it's like a totally different thing. It's way more active and not separate and above in a PvP scenario rather than a PvE scenario. So it's like it's very different in that scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I would tend to think the same thing. I talk a lot about node wars. I mean, I specifically went the sort of battle cleric idea that still needs to be fleshed out, but being right up there, trying to be a little bit less squishy, be up front line, make people focus on me while trying to keep everyone else up and going. So I can see that you know, whose fault is it, right? So a raid wipes. Who's the first person that gets talked to?
So let's
healers, right?
Let's talk about this, okay? We're just gonna use pure logic here, okay? What's the job of the tank in a raid? Just the general job of a tank in a raid.
Damage soaker and threat.
Okay, what's the job of a DPS?
Kill the son of a bitch.
What's the job of a healer?
Keep the tank up.
Keep the tank? Only the tank?
Yeah. Okay,
well, if the tank died, it's the healer's fault. That's their job.
Well, and I actually was going with that. So that, and I was not going to disagree with that. My point being in the personality types, right? So you do tend to, I think that's going to be somebody that is more, again, sort of conscientious and agreeable. So more sort of able to tolerate, yep, that was my fault. You know, yep, I messed up. Like they're better able to tolerate that.
Okay.
So I do think you see people in that realm going to healers specifically, because you know, if you lose your shit every time people die as a healer, I mean, people are going to quit playing with you.
Right.
It's so I do think you get people that are, I mean, they obviously don't want to die. They don't want you to lose, but I think they're more okay with it. They're blame when it happens. But yeah, it's all about keeping the tank up. I mean, if your DPS is needing a bunch of heals, then they're doing something wrong. So.
They're doing something wrong. I see. So your thought process is that there's something about the general healer milieu, the personality, that makes it easier for them to accept blame.
Yeah, I mean, because really, you are going to exactly what you said. I think in my experiences have been throughout raiding and just grouping, especially pugs. Like WoW pugs, somebody does something stupid and everyone dies. Healer, what the hell's wrong with you? You didn't keep us healed. It's like, well, your dumbass was running through the fire. Like but you know, you tend to get that blame. I think a lot more than say a tank, say. You know, a rogue or somebody that's up in melee, you know, I think you tend to get that blame because if somebody dies, that means they run out of health, which means that the healer did not heal them. So I think you do have to have sort of the personality of where, you know, you're okay. You can take that sort of, I don't want to say blame, but, you know, I don't think healers are ones to just really be reactive. I guess is a good way to put it.
Aberat here said that we roll with the punches and gently steer. So in my experience, healers don't gently do anything. when it comes to reacting to being blamed for for deaths, whether they're their fault or not. Like kind of like what you said, usually like when you went through the fire, dumbass. Like that's the response that I typically think of from a healer. There's nothing gentle about that.
Yeah. And again, this is where things are. It's very muddy watered. Like it's not as straightforward. You would think, okay, a certain person's going to play an upfront, in your face melee character, but that's just not always the case.
Right.
I could go into World of Warcraft right now. I have basically one of everything, and I'll play one of everything. So
yeah, I think
it's really hard.
think this is more like that first character. Like when you first log into an MMO and you're getting ready to like venture out for the first time, what class do you pick? And I have from a personal perspective, I have noticed that I tend to pick. It's interesting to me. We'll get into this a little bit later on when we get more into class stuff. But from a role perspective, it's almost always melee, almost always. And then, it's almost always tank and it's always melee. That's what I mean. It's usually a tank. 90% of the time, 85% of the time, it's going to be a tank class. And if it's not, it'll be some melee DPS class. And I feel like most people, like I got a buddy, his name is Mabari. He might be in chat right now. I think I've seen him one time earlier. He's going to pick an archer. Like he's obsessed with bows and arrows, and he's going to pick an archer class every time as if that's the option, And then I got some other people who hang out in my Discord and stuff, and they're like, don't even talk to me about Ashes until the rogue is in, because they're going to do the rogue gameplay. So that I think that's more what I'm trying to go with is like that first character, because yes, eventually we all make all the characters, most of the time.
Yeah. I mean, I think, yes, I would agree. So your first sort of role in a MMORPG or just in a game, for you, you're saying I like to be up front, down in the mess. Just put me right there in the front. Yep. I want to bash people in the head. I want to be right there. Somebody who plays a mage probably is not comfortable with that. They don't want to be up front. They don't want to be right there in the middle. They want to stand back. They want to be able to see what all's going on, so that they can judge and make decisions that way. I think your rangers are probably somewhere in between, depending on the game. They can do some range. They can do some up front. And then, yes, your rogues 100% right there in the back. Of course, they want to do it to your back. They don't want
they don't want to do anything to
everyone's
front.
face. But no,
sneaky bastards.
They have to have that. Yep. Yes, that antisocial behavior. But no, I think you're correct there, in that your first sort of, because my really big, I'm trying to think. So EverQuest would have been a druid. So yes, I would have been sitting in the back, kind of healing. World of Warcraft would have been a mage. So I do have sort of a pattern history of being more in the background, where I get to sort of assess the entire battlefield and decide what I'm going to do, which I think does speak to personality. But of course, things change over time. So like I said, now with playing a cleric in Ashes of Creation, if that's what I do, because bards actually look pretty freaking badass too. I want to now be up front. So that is actually a switch for me. So also, your personalities and things, your choices can change over time as well. But no, I think you're right that your comfortability level of your personality will definitely dictate what you first try.
Sean says rogues aren't my favorite. I just want to point out that for some reason, Restream is not sending over the comments from YouTube and not copying them like it's supposed to. So there's a boatload of YouTube comments that I missed out on. So I just want to apologize to all of you guys, because I've been paying attention to Twitch and just now noticed that. So let's now shift the conversation from role to class, because I'll further give you my dime store psychology of my own personality when it comes to class selection. So, are you familiar with Jonathan Haidt's study on disgust and sensitivity to disgust and all that stuff? A little bit?
Yes.
So I'm like an ultra conservative person. I'm like to the right of Genghis Khan, like ultra conservative person. And so I find personally that when I'm given an array of tanks to choose from, because a lot of games have an array of tanks to choose from. Because that's we've already determined I'm going to pick a tank, right? That's the role that I'm going to want to play. I will pick the least magical, extra special, anything extra. Like, I want to be like a dude in armor with a shield and a sword, and I don't want to be casting any spells. Like I don't want to be no magical nothing. I want it to just be real basic. And I don't know why that is, but I've always been that way. And so, like, in Dark Age of Camelot, I was an armsman, which is, I mean, you can't get more basic than an armsman in Dark Age of Camelot. And the paladin in Dark Age of Camelot was a far better tank than an armsman. Far better, but I never played one. And then in World of Warcraft, I started out as a warrior and I went full defensive spec, and it was just, as basic as you could possibly get. And the paladin was a much better tank than the warrior, but I didn't care. I was just doing this. And so I wonder if it's just me, or if there is something to that where when you start to parse out a role into the different classes that can fill into that role, like you got your Death Knights and your armsmen and your paladin and your different ones or whatever. Why do people gravitate towards certain ones, or is it just like fulfillment of a specific power fantasy?
That's a good question. Power fantasy, yeah, that is part of it too. There is actually a lot in there on sort of avatars and sort of how they are a reflection of us and what we want to be. But anyways, it's probably a mix of all of that, right? And so part of it's going to be personality. What you want is just, I don't want to say basic, but you said you don't want spells. You want to actually just be able to hit people, not worry about magical components. That could be personality. That could also just be the gameplay style, that not wanting the sort of complexities of having to worry about mana, this cooldown and that cooldown, and what spell does what, and it's probably all of the above. But within the specific different types of tanks, a personality is going to be a component of all of this. It's just really hard to pin down specifics of it because there's so many other things that are thought to play a role. Again, including the avatar, which probably starts to matter even towards that class component more than some other things. But yeah, so if you like things to be, like, as you say, just give me that sword, that shield, and just let me bash people in the head. Yeah, I think that speaks to you as a person, sort of what you want to do, what you don't want. You're very clear what you don't want to do, which is
right,
good.
Right. Yeah, I mean, one thing I've learned about myself, and this is getting off the topic of specifically personality and class choice, but just in general, I have an extremely consistent personality. Like, what you're getting right now is me 24/7, 365. I don't get different than this. If you like this, we can be buddies. If you don't like this, we're never going to get along, because this is me all the time. So I don't know if there's like some level of that may be why I continue to choose the same things all the time, because my personality is very, very consistent. I haven't thought about that until just now.
Yeah, and personalities aren't going to change a ton over time, right? Because they are going to be sort of a product of your upbringing, right?
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Sort of the examples you were given, how you were taught to be, sort of what you learned young and moving forward. It's not that it's entirely static, but these are your sort of real basic instincts of who you are, how you react, how you think, your actions. And so it is not something that's going to change a ton, but it could over time if you put some effort into it. But but that's also where you start to get into like interests, which aren't necessarily going to be entirely personality. That's why people have alts, so many altaholics out there, to experience different things. That actually falls under what they would call openness to experience, which is also highly correlated to MMOs. So,
really?
Mm-hmm.
People who are higher in
RPGs.
openness to experience play more MMOs?
Yeah, and role-playing games, yeah. Because they're more open to, they're curious, they're, imaginative, they want to experience something different. And theoretically, MMOs should be changing over time, so there should always be things to explore and do.
You
know,
wake
right?
me up when that happens. when MMOs
Yeah,
are changing
no.
over time.
Specifically the role-playing component, though,
Okay.
which starts to make sense, right? I think your people that like to role-play do tend to be a little bit more open in what they're willing to sort of try and do. So
Interesting. Like I would not score very high on the openness to experience score of the Big Five personality for sure. I mean, I say I would not. I don't. I've taken this several times. I don't score high on that, but I've been doing MMOs like for 25 years. Like that's the overwhelming majority of my gaming for 25 years has been MMOs. But I've never really gotten really hardcore into like the role playing, like sitting and like typing out what I'm doing right now, that part of it.
yeah, and that's something that I have that discussion with Diggs all the time. What is role playing? Like his definition. I think most of us actually don't role play within these games. You know, the sort of traditional role playing component, the openness component would be, you know, literally talking and if you're Rinkai talking in whatever accent you think they have, and completely being a Rinkai. And most of us aren't going to do that. I've played with some people who do. They're very interesting. In EverQuest 2, I had a guy I met who was a paladin, holy, so he was on the holy side, and it drove me nuts because whenever we would try to go get groups, he would not play with anyone that was evil or he perceived as neutral. Like they all had to be good, they had to be good aligned, or he would just not touch them one bit. That starts to drive me like kind of nuts. Yeah, that's going a little bit far, but he was big into role playing. I'm not necessarily even huge into role playing myself, so
I'll tell you that, man. I've a kind of an interesting history with the idea of role playing in games. In Dark Age of Camelot, did you play Dayak?
A tiny bit. I was more
Okay.
EverQuest.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in Dark Age of Camelot, they had role play servers. They had servers that were for role players. And really, the only thing about that role play server or those role play servers that I personally like, the reason why I played on them, it's because they had naming convention rules. You couldn't name your character like Super Sandwiches or misspellings of Legolas, and like you had to have like a legit actual name. And so that helped me from I like it. It always takes me out of it as soon as I see somebody with a stupid name. Like have a dang name that goes with what you're doing. And so I always did that. And there were a lot of role players on these servers, and I would legitimately try to get into the role playing, but I just never could. And I remember being in this group, and there was a minstrel in our group, so a bard basically, which the Ashes of Creation bard is based heavily on the minstrel class in Dark Age of Camelot. They are very similar. And also the bard class in Dark Age of Camelot, but I think a little closer to minstrel. But anyway, he was like, in that game, I think we're going to do some of this in Ashes of Creation, where you're just sitting at a camping spot and you're just pulling groups of mobs out of that spot, like out of a dungeon that has a bunch of orcs or goblins or something like that. You're just pulling some in, and everybody kills them, and then they pull in more, and we're just sitting there. And like in between pulls, he would like literally sit down in game and type out like, Harry reaches over and pulls out a blade of grass. Not a blade of grass, but like a stem of grass, and like, puts it in his mouth and picks some food out of it, like literally like going through what the character would be doing. And I tried so hard because it looked fun. Like it looked to me like he was having a blast, just like explaining what we were doing while we were all sitting there. What we weren't just playing a video game. He was living in this world. But I don't have whatever that requires. I don't have it.
Yeah. I mean, it takes dedication, right? To narrate what you're imagining your character is doing. And to be constantly doing that, to actually be in that role. That takes a lot of effort and energy that I don't have. I will go sit and listen to people. I've done that in World of Warcraft on role playing servers. People actually role playing out whatever plays, whatever they created in their mind.
People are creative, man.
I guess this is kind of role playing, but Lord of the Rings online, you actually have bands playing songs and giving concerts.
Lotro is where I've seen the most role play. Like they go hard in Lotro.
Like I'll partake in the observation. I don't know that I have it in me to just be constantly living in the skin of a character. That's not me. Although there actually is quite a bit of research on that, but more so than class selection. So
in the chat over here, Leon Kerbin asks, will you ask him if alt players will experience tomorrow more? I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I saw that, and I don't either.
I thought maybe you would. Okay. Moving on to another one. Aberrat says, Zillan does not seem open to change. Were you not listening when I said I was to the right of Genghis Khan? Like, no, I'm not. I'm pretty much set in how I am. I'm good with that. I will say one area that I am open to change, and this is one of the things that I really admire in other people when I see it. I absolutely will move when the evidence points me in a different direction on an opinion or a thought or whatever. If there's evidence that contradicts what I believe, I don't go into that makes me believe what I already believed harder, which I know that's a thing that a lot of people do. I move with the truth. I've said this before. One of my favorite political commentators says that he's never wrong because when the truth moves, he moves with it. And I'm like, that's not really accurate. What you just said is a little silly, but I see the point that you're trying to get in. So I definitely will move with the truth. But as far as like how I am and who I'm turning 44 on Saturday. I'm turning 44 on Saturday. I'm kind of who I am at this point. We're not changing up too much. Samurai K Yoshi with a follow and a first time chat. He says, "Why does the MMO RPG genre not appeal as much to the younger generation?" Also, Hrimnir just subscribed for the 3rd month. Thank you so much, Hrimnir. I really appreciate it. Phantom, do you want to?
That's a complex question. Very complex. I think one thing is that you just haven't had a good new one in forever. So you're talking about a generation that didn't come up on EverQuest, didn't come up on World of Warcraft, that are now entering into age of playing MMORPGs. I think another big part of this is just attention span. MMOs take up a lot of your time. That's just the nature of it. You tend to live in another world, hours of your day gone. And I think, you look at sort of hugely successful games now. I mean, Fortnite comes to mind. I mean, your play sessions are fast, right? You're either getting a reward or you're not, like within minutes. And that's just not how it is in an MMORPG. You have to build up to something. It takes it takes weeks to get to even the character level. Then you have to get your gear. Then you have to learn the encounters. It's just not a quick reward. And so I think that is something with sort of younger generations. And that's not a knock on younger generation. I just think they have grown up in a different way than what we did. I think, the older generation too, like we were the first ones with the MMORPG. So we also have a lot of nostalgia attached to it. So I will also say a lot of the things we look back on fondly.
Yeah.
If we were introduced to them today as a new game, we would probably say they're shit.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different elements that makes it a very complex question. But I think it's possible to bring them in. I think if you can introduce the right mechanics, the right blending of sort of modern, successful genres into the MMORPG, then I think you'll snatch up that group of people. But we'll see.
I want to answer that question too because I have a slightly different answer. But I do want to bring up Cam123176 with a first time chat asked the question: would you rather poop a pineapple or piss a grape? I'm gonna poop a pineapple personally.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Like I don't want to do either one, but if I have to do the other, pissing a grape sounds nah, fam. I'm out.
Although the pineapple is going to be really pointy, and versus the grape is smooth.
The pineapple is going to be okay. Let's look at it this way: the pineapple is going to be destructive as well, but it's destructive in an area that I'm much rather willing to have be destructed than the other one. So
All right.
let's go with that.
Yeah, that's
okay.
fair.
So on the question about why the younger generation is not into MMOs, I've done a lot of different videos where I've talked about it, kind of around this subject. But if you think about it, when you and I were growing up, when we were kids, when we were teenagers and young teenagers, multiplayer was you and somebody sitting next to each other on the couch, and each of you had a controller. And if you wanted to play more than just the two people, you had to have a friend who had the special connector that you put in that allowed you to have 4 controllers. That friend had to actually have 4 controllers. That friend had to actually have a game that supported 4-player co-op, and that friend actually had to have parents that allowed 5 or 6 teenage boys to all come sit in one room and be all loud and screaming and yelling and stuff like that. And 4 players was massively multiplayer because 2 was as big as we'd ever experienced. So when the PC generation came in and the internet and all this stuff, and you started getting your MUDs and you started getting your early MMOs like Ultima Online and EverQuest and those, that was mind-boggling. You mean me and 500 people can all be engaged in a battle? Are you fucking kidding me? Like, that's crazy. And so I think the novelty of that is why we all became obsessed with that thing, the whole MMO thing. But they got held back by a specific technological restraint that still exists today that Ashes of Creation is trying to solve, which is the number of players on the screen at any given time. You can't, like, people always talk about action combat is the only way to do it. Tab target sucks. And I'm like, well, tab target does kind of suck. I see the point in it and whatever, but you literally cannot do action combat with thousands and thousands of players. It's not possible from a coding server technology standpoint. It can't happen. Now you got Star Citizen with what they're doing with the dynamic server, and then Ashes of Creation with the dynamic server. And as this becomes a thing, and as more and more companies start to do it, I think you're going to see Call of Duty where it's 5,000 versus 5,000 instead of 50 versus 50. Or 500 versus 500. Or 1,000 versus 1,000. And so these games are going to get bigger. And so as they get bigger, and the technology allows you to have more people on screen and do more things, it also will allow MMOs to embrace true action combat with the bunch of the players. And that's when they're going to bring in the younger generation, because the younger generation has grown up with action, not this tab targeting, boring, stand there, watch your guy attack. I want to physically do the attack. So to me, that's what has happened. It's been a technological restraint that is only just now, this is a 25-year process, only just now starting to become overcome. That's my GoldenEye is a perfect example. Yes. Yeah.
I mean, that's a great point, because even when you look at all of the tech that they've just mentioned putting together, these are all recently developed things that people are starting to place. You know, the replication graph, as an example, was created, by Unreal for Fortnite to try to get 100 people in one area, and that's just that's relatively recent. So you're I think you're dead on there. That the craziness of being able to be in a world with all these other people to us back in the 90s was just like mind blowing. Not so much anymore.
Tangaruru says you listed out different types who typically go healer. Could you do that for tanks? I'll do that in just 1 minute. I will. Samurai K Yoshi did have a follow up and said that's fair. He said, do you think AOC delivers? Do you think if AOC delivers as promised and it turns out actually good, will that bring a new generation of players to the genre, or will it be all the veteran MMO players just coming back? You want to take that? Do you have a thought on this?
I think it'll probably blend both. Primarily, it'd be a blend of both, but I actually think you'll probably get younger people more than the older folks, because I think I don't want to go down the whole PvE versus PvP path, because that ends up in dark, bad places. But I think a lot of your older generation, not all, but a lot, are just strictly PvE, and I think a lot of your younger generation are very comfortable with dying and killing other people, because that's what they've grown up playing with, shooters and things like that.
Yep.
So I think if they can merge this in a way that Ashes just works with PvP content and blending in PvE content, then I actually think you are going to bring in a lot more younger people than you probably are older people. Also you're starting to get into, especially with the idea of action combat and stuff, you're getting into reaction times and things like that. And so, unfortunately, the older we get, the less stout we are in those sorts of things, and people end up not wanting to do that. So,
right.
I think if they hit it, you're going to see a lot younger groups, which is I don't know their ages, but I mean, you look at the top people, the top streamers that have sort of spoken out about Ashes and are super excited about it, they're all younger, right? They didn't grow up in the EverQuest days. So
right. No, I agree completely. I believe I said on the season of Bespoke that I was on with Copium Clinic, Dr. Burns over there, that Ashes of Creation will be the MMO of Gen Z. And maybe Gen Z, Gen Alpha, like as the younger. So I have a 20-year-old son, and he's a PC gamer, and I mean, he just could not be less interested in World of Warcraft and that, all that. But Ashes of Creation, like, first off, dad makes content for it. So, like, he's automatically going to be like, whatever, because he's at that age. But, like, influencers and creators and stuff that he watches bring up Ashes every once in a while, just like, just keep your eye on this thing because this looks cool. And so every once in a while he'll come to me and ask me questions about what's going on with this system or what's going on here. And it's like every time I talk to him, he's kind of like, okay. And I can see the wheels turning, like I might actually play this game. And then he has to like square the fact that he's going to be playing a video game with his dad, and that his dad also plays. So he's got to square that up. But yes, I think the younger generation is going to, assuming Ashes is able to do a lot of things that I think that they're going to do and deliver on a lot of promises that they have promised, I do think that they will bring in a lot of the younger generation. So there we go. So back to the question of the different types of people who play tanks. Do you, before I list out my absurd non-research crackerjack box bullshit, do you have any thoughts on?
I want to see what you have to say.
So I've found a few different types of people who play tank, okay, over the years. Number one, I want to point out that more women should play tank. More women should play tank. Women are just several orders of magnitude better multitaskers than men, and tanking requires multitasking. So women should be in this group. Let's get that out of the way. Women should be in this group. Okay. So you have your, like you point out, your confident, extroverted, me. This guy right here, this guy plays tank. Every time you meet this guy, he's going to be a tank player every time. Or the overwhelming majority of time. You this is weird. What I'm trying to figure out how to say this in a non-insulting way, but I almost can't think of one. Like midwits. Like I feel like it may just be that I judge tanks too harshly, but I just feel like there's a lot of like just really dumb people. Like I don't know, like supremely dumb DPS or supremely dumb healers. Like if you play those classes, like you learn in your rotation and you know what, but tanks, I feel like about a third of them are, you're like, God, you're dumb. So dumb people, confident leaders, and then, like DP, kind of like there's a lot of disaffected tanks that play healer. I think there's a lot of disaffected DPS that play tanks, and I think it's because they like they get tired of the fact that they have to count on the tank to do a mechanic properly in order for them to keep their DPS up, and they won't do it, so they try out tank. And then if you're even mildly competent at tank, nobody else will ever let you do anything else because they need the competent tanks, and so you get stuck in it. So like disaffected DPS who tried tanks once and were good at it and are now stuck at it. Confident leaders and dumb guys. That's my three tank archetypes for you there.
No, I could see that too. Yeah. You have the people like you will find really in any class that will, like what you're describing with you, that really want to learn the actual tank role, be up front, be a leader, be multitasking. which is one subset, definitely. And then I've also, yes, I can see the other where it's I'm a meat shield. All I got to do is run up and hit these things.
Yep.
And it's your job to do whatever else.
Yep.
I sometimes don't even need to get out of the fire. You just have to keep me up.
Yes. Yes.
There's definitely both of those. Yeah. And I think that's perception of the role, right? Which probably is more so related to just intelligence. It's going to sound bad, but intelligence and just
IQ is a real thing. I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah, like you're gonna that I think you might divide more so on just IQ and self goals than personality specifically.
Yeah,
because at the end of the day, I think all tanks like to just bash things in the head. So some are just more effective at it than others.
So superhero with a really good follow up here. He says women are great at multitasking, yes, but leadership, Tanking requires you to take initiative, be authoritative, and be able to herd cats. Some women are great at this, but not on average. And that's probably about accurate. I will say that in Star Wars: The Old Republic, where I was a leader of a high end progression rating guild, like we were, we did pretty good. By far, the two best tanks that I ever played with were both women. Like they could. Oh, it's crazy how good they were at doing the mechanic they're supposed to do, watching what everybody else was doing and making sure they were doing the thing that they were supposed to do, calling out the next mechanic that's about to happen. Like they could just kind of like see it all. And I remember being like, it's everything I have. Like it takes every bit of focus and concentration I have to do what I'm supposed to do and be vaguely aware of what everyone else is doing, but they can call out specifics, Yeah. And then one of the things that I always found very interesting about that as well is at the time that I was doing that, the girl that I was seeing, she was a healer on our raid team, and her and this one other girl who were also raided with us a lot were really good at knowing what everybody else. This gets into the nosiness thing, but they always knew what everybody else was doing, and so they would just send me a message and be like, "Just so you know, Mabari was the one standing in fire. Dragon was the one who didn't do this mechanic. Sheev didn't do this or whatever." They always knew what everybody else was doing. So, women are nosy, I guess.
I mean, every raid guild that I've been in, actually, I don't think I've ever been in a raid guild that had a main tank that was female. But
really?
About half of them were led by women, during raids and the guild themselves. So yeah. I don't know. I'm sitting in my head trying to think back of all the main tanks I've played with consistently. I mean, I'm sure I've played with people just in pugs and things, but from a pure raid guild perspective, I don't think They've always been dudes. So
yeah, it is overwhelmingly dudes, and I've even there were a few girls who were like the girl that I was dating at the time, but that were in our guild they were hardcore raiders. They were really good. They were doing nightmare level, which is the hardest level. Is it Mythic? Is Mythic the hardest level in WoW?
Yeah, Mythic mini pluses.
Yeah. So they were doing nightmare level rating. So they were really, really good at the game. And I tried to get them hey, why don't you take on this tank role? But now that I'm thinking back about it, that comment about them not being authoritative and stuff, that's coming. I couldn't get them to grasp the leadership aspect of it or to actuate it. I would talk to them about it and they would say, okay, yeah. But then once they got started, they wouldn't actually initiate that. You got to be the leader. You got to go. So, I don't know. That's an interesting conversation though about the tank types. Okay, so now we've done who plays healer and we've done who plays tank. I want you to take a stab at 3 general personality types that play DPS.
Oh, the ones that don't want you have the ones that don't want responsibility of healing or tanks, right? They don't want any business with directing, keeping people alive, and those are usually the ones that don't follow mechanics very well. You have the ones like you mentioned that they are very goal oriented and that they want to see their name at the top of DPS. I think those are two different people. They want to rule and they don't really care about anything else. They don't care about who else. They just want to get there. And then I think you have people that are just interested more in the class. They just want to play. They like the mage. They like the ranger. It's more of a class based rather than a performance based sort of of thing, with what they're comfortable with, which actually brings in another topic, which I think plays a big role in all of this, especially and with class choice. Was there's a concept called flow. From a psychologist, I think in the 70s is when he described it, but it's sort of the state of mind when you're playing well, in this instance, when you're playing a game and you sort of lose track of time. You're sort of in the world. We've all had that, right? Where you sit down, I'm going to play for 30 minutes. And next thing you know, it's like 3 hours later. Mm-hmm. It's 3 a.m. and you just kind of got lost in it. Like you were in the flow. That is really governed by our ability. What we're doing, the challenge, is that equal to our ability, or close enough that we're learning. In this concept of flow, if something is too tough for us, if it's too hard for me, then I'm going to get super anxious and I'm going to quit. If it's super easy for me, then I'm going to get bored and I'm going to quit. So I also think you have people that are just more comfortable and just more capable in things like a mage or a ranger. And so they gravitate towards that challenge because that's where they stay in this flow state, versus if they're not comfortable with a healer and they're not good at it, then they're probably not going to stay. They're just not going to keep up with it. They'll switch to something else. So that's just another concept. Like I said, this is a complex topic.
It really is a complex topic.
In a lot of different stuff. So.
It really is. It's funny. I know you've been reading papers. I've been thinking about it since somebody brought it up in my chat, and I wish I could remember who it was that suggested we did do this, but whoever that was, thank you, because this has been an interesting conversation. Peterson talks a little bit about what you just mentioned there with the flow, and I'm trying to remember how he worded it, but it had to do with like time passing by when you're in the space where you want to be and need to be and everything. But I can't remember how he words all that. So, but I think I understand what you're talking about. So for me, football has always been that way for me. When I get out on a football field, it is crazy. A 2-hour football game, it'll be over in 4 minutes for me. I'll be like, holy but that is me at my athletic and mental best. Like I'm doing everything I can. I'm in that flow, and so I can see that. It's funny that I don't believe I've ever experienced that in MMOs. It's probably because I'm not that good at them. That's not where my competitive fire comes out.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. So you have there's several different components, but one is just high concentration. So you're just intently focused on whatever the task it is. So literally everything else outside of this doesn't exist. So that's where you kind of get stuck in the game. You almost lose sense of yourself. You're just wrapped into whatever activity it is. Also a component is sort of immediate feedback. So the ability to get either positive or negative, but you're getting constant feedback along the way of how your performance is. And these things just all sort of wrap in together where you just literally lose sense of time. And as you say, an hour passes and feels like 4 minutes. Hopefully you're having a good time.
Yeah.
But, that is all. And that's all based off of our abilities, our strengths and our weaknesses. But which also consequently, I think is what brings me into, I guess I said I wasn't going to go into the PvE, PvP rabbit hole, but
I think we can do it. It's fine.
I think that is going to be the biggest challenge for Intrepid, is this concept of flow in people's skill levels, because you're trying to mix in different groups of people with different skills. And if you can't produce content that addresses both skills equally, then I think you start to lose one group over the other. But it's just flow is a very interesting concept. I would go read about it if you're interested. I guarantee you everyone has experienced it at some point, and you'll have a name for it now.
Yeah. Okay. The flow state. That's pretty interesting. So a different twist on this that I wanted to talk about is the I guess kind of mental health, but but from the research that you've done, is there any correlation at all between maybe different mental health diagnoses and a class choice or maybe a game choice or anything like that? Is there something specific in that realm that you've read about? Or?
That is an interesting question. Certainly, when you talk about like the big five personality, neuroticism is a part of that. So that's starting to get into anxiety and anger and things like that. Which does influence, your people who are highly neurotic are not going to be leaders. They're not going to pick that sort of role. Actually, it's highly questionable if they even would play a game like this. They're probably going to be more single player type stuff where they can kind of manage things on their own. That's an interesting question. There's certainly a lot of research going into looking at depression, PTSD, anxiety disorders in general, and gaming. I don't know that, as far as class choice, there's nothing that would immediately pop out to me as far as any of your sort of normal diagnoses. Certainly, there is some research or literature on sort of antisocial, sort of psychopaths, that sort of thinking of deceit and backstabbing and exploitative. I think you do see, maybe not specific to class, but there is some research, and people are probably going to shit on me and chat about this, but there actually is some research, again, take it for what you will, that suggests that type of player, which is a mental health diagnosis. It's very different than like depression or bipolar or anything like that, but it is a personality disordered person, that they do tend to be more PvP players. So
so your psychos are PvP players. That's not everyone. That's not what I'm saying. But that's that personality complex. I'm changing the thumbnail of this video to a picture of an arrow pointing to you, and it just says all PvPers are psychos.
Yeah, I'd rather not end up dead. And it's not my research. I am the messenger.
Yeah.
But that's the only thing that I could even really kind of closely relate. Now, to be fair, I didn't actually I didn't extensively research the idea of actual individual diagnoses, but it can be supportive. I don't know about class though. I think you would see people more engaging in sort of MMORPGs more for the social aspect, the connection to other people, because that's what they are, right? I think I read this at some point. I don't even remember where I read it, but they basically said your MMORPGs were the first social media. That is the sort of first social media thing that existed. And so I do think you'll see people that gravitate towards that just want that connection, that are, either have depression or something like that. But specific to class roles, nothing would pop out in my head.
Okay. So I have ADHD, was diagnosed with that when I was like in third grade or something like that. And only now am I realizing that, our society just does a piss poor job of, number one, understanding what ADHD even is, but more specifically, like they treat it like it's a school only thing. Like we need to medicate you while you're in school, and then as soon as you're out of school, whether that be for the day or you're just done with school, you don't need medication, you're good anymore. And it's like, no, this affects the day-to-day life of everybody, or not everybody, but of everything that a person with ADHD does for the rest of their life. And so one of the things that about ADHD specifically, that they're starting to like better understand this, is that like there is how do I explain this? There's a correlation between the immediacy of the consequence of your actions that is super important to somebody with ADHD. They respond to things when the consequences are immediate. So like, I'll give you an example: throwing clothes on the floor and not folding them and putting them up. There's no consequence that's going to happen anytime soon. And because of that, I'm telling you right now, I haven't folded or put up clothes in like 30 years. No exaggeration. I don't do it. You're never going to get me to do it. But I think about, so now that I've been researching this and looking into this and all this, I think about MMOs and how there's an immediate consequence for like every decision that you make, like literally every button press. Your next ability, if you don't do the next ability, and so like it allows me to hyper focus in on like what's the next thing that I need to do that has the most next immediate consequences. And so I don't think that would, again, like you said, I don't think that had anything to do with class selection or even role selection, but just the MMO genre in general seems to like you're building towards something and everything has these consequences and all that stuff. It just seems like I was genetically predisposed to loving MMOs or something like that. I just, it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, and MMOs have many different functions, right? So, yeah, you're going to have people that gravitate towards the dungeons and the raids, but then you're going to have a huge subset of people that don't really care to do that. They'll still be in the world with you, but they're going to craft, they're going to make things.
Right.
That's where their joy is. You have other groups that just want to explore. I don't care about the combat. That's the digs, right? I just want to be able to explore the world.
Dig, so you don't care about the combat?
No, well, now that he's seen the bard, he said he's good to go. But we'll see.
The bard ain't got no damn offense. What are you gonna do? You scream at somebody and run from him for 30 seconds until you can scream at him again?
We'll make it work. We'll make it work. But that's the fun part of MMOs is that you do have these blended people sharing the same world.
Yes.
Really for very different reasons. Everyone has to pick a class, but not everyone chooses to be crafters or be high-level raiders or go do a Mythic 12 dungeon or stuff like that. So,
yeah, definitely. So is there anything else in your research that I haven't asked you about specifically that you found interesting, that you thought, hey, I should mention this, or if he says this, I'm going to, I'm going to counter with that. Anything like that you found?
Again, I think the more interesting thing to me that actually does have a little bit of stuff behind it is the avatars that we play more so. And I think class kind of plays into that avatar as well. It's sort of a package that there is some idea behind the idea that or there's some ideas that we sort of pick a character and make it an idealized form of us. So in that sense, when you create a character and you select a class, I think packaged as an avatar, that does play into your class selection because you are sort of your idealized person. What could I be if I didn't have to be me, right? In this fantasy world, this is what I would love to be able to do. And it tends to follow. So if you tend to be an agreeable person in real life, then you're probably going to be a character that's agreeable in the virtual world. So there's actually a lot of very interesting stuff with just avatars.
What do you mean by a character that's agreeable in a virtual world? Because I can understand a role that's agreeable, like a healer role, but like the character itself, the avatar.
Yeah, just somebody that is just very altruistic, right? In their real life will tend to be that way as a character. So they're going to do well for other people. They'll help people that, if you see somebody that can't kill a mob, you go help them. Just very altruistic, very caring. So the thought being that our sort of natural personalities get kind of amplified potentially a little bit by the avatar that we create. There's some nuances to that, but it's just very interesting because there's also research that does say you can go the opposite way, right? So you can specifically choose an avatar that is villainous. I'm going to be a villainous character
because I'm so good in real life. Is that what you mean, or you mean?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, with the villainous comment.
Yeah.
No, that's just more just I'm going to play a villainous character, and that sorts of brings out these inner behaviors of us that we don't necessarily do daily. So there's a lot of like research all over this that kind of can wash each other out depending on who you want to read.
Isn't that
typically
the case with almost everything?
A lot. Typically we're going to look at, meta-analysis and things like that. I did find one that was looking at some of this, and it was basically a wash, that nothing was shown to be influencing anything, which I don't think is accurate. But and I've experienced that. So I have always played, and I think this is, again, personality-wise, I've always played sort of the good guy faction. I was the Wood Elf Druid in EverQuest, and I was the Alliance player in World of Warcraft. I've just always played sort of the goody two shoe characters.
Yep.
But
Me too.
I got to a point where, with Chronicles of Illyria, yes, I said that name. I actually thought I'm gonna do a villain arc. I thought this will be fun. And I started doing it, and it was fun. But I'm not a villain in real life. So again, it's just really, there's things that suggest we bring ourselves into our characters and amplify them, but then we can also be very intentional about trying to do something different.
So I have a hard time with that. Like, Mass Effect, Dragon Age Origins, like games that have like a good bad system or whatever. Mm-hmm. Number one, my first playthrough, it's going to be like all the way good. Like I'm not going to make any bad decisions. I don't even care if I don't even agree with the decision, which a lot of times I don't agree with the good decisions, is because I think that they're stupid and ignorant of history and etc. But I'll pick the good decisions all the way through. And then I'll be like, when I get done, I'm going to go back through and I'm going to play a bad guy, and I'll start out, but I can't keep it going. I cannot. I'm like, I even in a video game, I can't like play out. Grand Theft Auto 4. Do you ever play much of the Grand Theft Auto series?
Tiny bit.
So, and this is weird. This is I feel like this is like a specific to Zillin. I'm the only person on Earth who feels this way, kind of thing. But you're always playing a bad guy in Grand Theft Auto 4. You're literally a car thief. That's what it is or whatever. And like in Grand Theft Auto 5, you're the guys that you're playing, the main characters that you're taking on, the avatars, they are criminals. That's what they are. You are playing as them being a criminal, and I'm fine with all that. But in Grand Theft Auto 4, you're playing this guy who came from another country, a foreigner, who came here to escape like the crime life, and I'm going to be a good person, et cetera, et cetera. And he gets to New York, and it's like the second one thing goes wrong, he's like, well, I'm going to solve it by killing everyone and robbing everyone. And I'm like, wait, what? And I've never gone through Grand Theft Auto 4 because I cannot like place myself in the body of this guy who's like, I'm going to be good. And then his first solution to everything is just fuck it, kill everyone. So I have a weird like hang up
hats
there.
Off to you. Yeah, that is you as a person.
Yeah, that's a weird hang up there. Through.
Yeah, but I had it. Yeah, I actually had it all set out, man. I was part of a kingdom that I had pledged to as a duke, or not duke, count. So I had land in the game. Well, theoretically, and yeah, that never actually happened. But anyways, I pledged to these people on the outward facing, and we did a show for Chronicles of Lyria, so we actually had a lot of community interaction and things with the community. Behind the scenes, I had a different account that was with a rival group, a different kingdom, and I have to say it was fun. That was probably more role playing than anything. But so. You can step out and sort of go against your normal path sometimes. That doesn't really speak to your personality, I don't think. That's just more interest.
Interesting.
Trying to explore. I'm also generally someone that likes to learn things. So if I see something on YouTube or wherever and like, hey, I want to learn if I can do that. I've done it with woodworking, big ass gardens, just a number of different things. I like to learn, to teach, and get myself to a certain level, and then I kind of move on to the next thing. And I think
do you have ADHD?
Yeah. Well,
that's an ADHD quality big time.
But I see that as well within like alts and sort of characters and how I play them. Yeah. I just kind of I personally want to explore differences. I want to go against the grain. that's where the battle cleric came from. Like I didn't want to jump in and play it like it was supposed to be. I wanted to like do my own thing and see if I can make it work. And I think that's going to be the same for the bard. I think you're going to see some very interesting solo capabilities of a bard as that all gets fleshed out. So that'll go against the grain.
That'll go against the grain. Interesting. Well, so that's good that you brought that up. I kind of want to transition now to let's just talk a little bit about Ashes of Creation. Let's learn about Phantom X in Ashes of Creation. And we'll do that here for just a little bit, and then we'll get out of here.
Sure.
I'm just gonna light the fire underneath you right now, right off the bat. Prediction for Alpha 2 launch date. What's your prediction?
I don't know that I can do that. Is Fupo still here?
Are you not even allowed to make a prediction?
So here's my concern, that if I do, people will think I have some sort of knowledge that I don't have.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I tend to stay away from that question.
Okay.
I will say Friday is a momentous day for Intrepid. It's either going to be a grand celebration or people are going to be really upset. So hopefully they have a date and they have things set to move forward.
Okay.
I do think it'll be sooner than later. I said I was one of those guys that kept saying they'll make their target. They'll make their target. Listen to me. They'll make their target, and then they didn't. So
right.
I guess the thing to learn there is don't listen to me.
Right. So. Well, see, one of the things I've been saying is that I've been dead wrong about the Alpha 2 date for 3 years in a row. Like, and I don't mean like I made 3 predictions. I mean, throughout all 3 years, I was making various predictions that have just been wrong and wrong and wrong and wrong. So don't listen to a damn thing I say. The only prediction that I've gotten right about the Alpha 2 date, or right, or close to right, or whatever, is I was saying this entire time when they announced Q3 and all that stuff, I've been saying September 78th. That's still technically Q3. And now it's looking like I might actually be pretty darn close. So that that's a fun little thing there. I've been enjoying laughing about that.
That is unfortunately one of those questions I just have to defer.
Okay, no, I understand that. I don't want you to get yourself in any trouble. Just in case anybody is confused, Phantom is a Phoenix Initiative member, so he doesn't want to jeopardize that by saying anything, and I totally get it. So yeah, I get that. So you kind of already. Well, no, you actually said that you're considering Bard now. You've been full team cleric, but Bard piques your ears a little bit.
I Bard was one of the more fun classes I played in EverQuest. I actually went back this weekend and started playing some vanilla EQ as the Bard. Completely bad choice, because I thought, I'm going to go experience what it's like to tune twist and do all these things. It's like after 5 hours, I'm level 3 and I have 2 spells. So anyways, so I've enjoyed it in the past, but seeing what they put out on the stream, it's literally 5 hours. I'm like level 3 or 4.
Yeah, no, I get you.
I have like 2 spells. Seeing what they put together, I'm super interested, because it also, I had put this in chat talking to Dr. Burns, like, the amount of healing that they've shown off in that was far more than I thought it would be.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
When I think support, I think, yes, you're going to have some heals here and there, but not the extent that they had. So I also think that sort of brings me in from a, maybe I don't have to play cleric. I can still heal and do some of these other interesting things. But then it also does have some interesting, just combat possibilities with some of the stuff they have. It's just, I think it will all hinge on one main thing. They have, of course, melodies, which are your persistent, buffs or whatever they are. And you have I don't have my notes. I forget what they called it, but counterpoint that. You can spec into counterpoint, and then you can kind of run 2 at the same time, 2 melodies. Whether I play Bard, honestly, is probably going to hinge on whether that gets expanded further than 2. Because what I'm used to in like EverQuest, in Tune Twisting, you could do like 3, 4, 5 different songs at once, depending on their cast time. So 2 seems a little stingy. Now they did say they would be looking at during the live stream that they would be looking at expanding that either through skill choices or other means. But I don't know. The bard just looks pretty. I feel like every time we get introduced to a new class, it one-ups everything before it. And usually the response everyone gives, because this was like for the cleric, for the tank, for the fighter, for the ranger. I think the only one that wasn't met with an immediate "this is OP" was the mage, which probably needs some work. But like literally every other class, it's been like, "this is overpowered," and so the bard just feels like way beyond all the others. But
I was making that point last week on stream that it's like they're getting better at making classes, and more specifically getting better at making classes not feel like just a regurgitated version of that role from other games or whatever. Like the tank is just like, I was not excited about tank at all. Like I was going to play it because I play a tank and that's what I do, but I was not excited like about the when they did the reveal. I'm like, it's just a tank in any other game. Now that wall that they can spam and create zones of combat and pull and put the wall down so you can't go back. And I was like, okay, now I'm a little more excited about tank because that's new, it's novel, it's something that's kind of a big deal. And this bard feels very novel. It feels very, very new. And the ranger was that way as well. Like I felt like, oh, this is different than what I was expecting, and it's different than what you can get in other MMOs. That's very interesting that you're into the bard, and for kind of the reasons that I was noticing. Like I wasn't expecting bards to be able to. I've been saying for a while, the only class that will be able to target another person and heal them on purpose is cleric. You'll be able to secondary into cleric and like add hots and area heals and stuff like that onto your attacks, but nobody's gonna be able to target someone and heal them. And bard being able to do it really like, I was like, oh shit, that really changes things. And I really do feel like a well-played bard is going to be able to change, like influence combat big time, determine the outcome of skirmishes and stuff. So I'm with you on bard. I think it's cool, and I will say that if I don't start out as a tank, it'll probably be bard, because it may just be an arrogance. So I played the minstrel class. That was my main in Dark Age of Camelot 20 years ago. I started out as an armsman, but I ended up as playing on the minstrel, and I loved how you were a little bit of a tank and a little bit of a DPS and a little bit of a controller, and you like had all these little things. And so you had, if you were quick-witted and you were with it, you could switch up what you were doing based on what's going on in combat and like influence things. And I'm like, that's a really good idea. And I probably need to choose a class that doesn't require extreme twitch and reaction skills, because I'm 44 and don't have those anymore. So that's interesting that you're going that way. So talking a little bit about the bard, you mentioned Lord of the Rings Online earlier. So you played Lord of the Rings Online?
Yeah, some.
Did you play the Lore Master class?
Lore Master, no.
Okay.
Played Minstrel, no, I did not. Champion, Guardian.
Okay.
No, not Lore Master.
Okay,
so actually the one time I tried to get away from sort of spell casting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. They don't cast spells. So
whatever they call it.
I know, and that's the point that I'm trying to get at. So Lord of the Rings is a low magic universe. There's very, very little magic. And almost all of it is in the form of like history repeating itself, and I know what's going to happen vaguely here, and so I can predict. Like it's kind of it's a weird thing the way that they treat magic. And so Lord of the Rings Online is a low magic universe. There's nobody, well, until the Rune Masters came in. We're not going to talk about that. There was when it originally launched, there was basically no magic. What the Lore Master did was they were reading books and attacking you with stories, essentially. And so if you take the utility of the Minstrel class in Dark Age of Camelot and you combine it with the way that the Lore Master attacked by story and word and spoken word, you kind of get the Ashes of Creation Bard. It's a combination of those two classes, and I'm just wondering what you think about that.
No, that I did not put that stuff together, but that entirely makes sense.
Yeah.
Wow. I hadn't thought of that.
So now you need to go play Lore Master in Lotro so you
Yeah.
can get used to
Yeah.
attacking that way.
Yeah, I mean, you know, with even with the idea of sagas and some of these other things that they're introducing in, I mean, that all starts to make a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah.
They've hit the bar out of the park. I mean, just
They
even
really
the
did.
animations are crazy. So
Yeah, they really are. Okay, so man, I've been rapid fire questioning predictions for Alpha 2 to all of my my guests that I've had on, but I'm not going to do that to you. I'm like, how many biomes, how many classes, how many races. I'm not going to do that to you because I don't want you to feel like you're under any pressure whatsoever that might violate your NDA, which so we're not going to do that.
NDA.
Yeah, NDA. My answer to all the questions is NDA. That's and I totally get that. I respect that. That's an investment for you. So tell me a little bit about your personal ambition or goals inside of Ashes of Creation. What do you want to accomplish?
Good question. The whole goal. So nodes is what brought me into Ashes Creation. Once I saw nodes, that was it. That was like, all right, I'm good. Freeholds being a subset of some of this, I had always, and actually, if you go back to some of our very first interviews with Steven, we've been blessed to talk to him 3 times. I've always asked about farming because that's what I wanted to do. I'm also getting older. I'm not super interested in raids anymore. I'll have fun doing them from time to time, but that's not my sort of goal for gaming at this point. I'll PvP some for fun. But I'm not going out of my way to sort of get into raids and stuff like that. So I had always envisioned this sort of paladin-like priest character that had a farm and animal husbandry, crops, things like that. And so I asked a lot of questions about that from some of our very earliest interviews with him. And that's what I've always wanted to do. I'm not so sure that's possible anymore. So, once we got to the Freehold stream, and it became clear some of the challenges that would be present to get a freehold. I'm not certain I will be able to have some of those things anymore. We'll see how testing plays out. Where that leaves me, I don't know. Actually, I'll probably just try my hand at sitting in a node and trying to use whatever publicly available service I have and kind of go from there. But my dreams of a freehold, I just don't think I'm going to be able to compete with people time wise or some of the other aspects financially, that sort of stuff. So that's a good question. I'm not entirely sure. Only thing I know for sure about in-game and Ashes of Creation is that I have made Diggs an NPC, so everyone will have to forever see Diggs in the game, whether or not he plays it. So
okay, there you go. Guild, are you in a guild?
We have Theory Forge, right? But that's a small group of people, which is nice. So we've had a group that played together now for 10 years, but it's not going to be grand designs of owning a castle and any of this stuff.
What about just being a patron guild of a node?
Yes, and actually I was about to say too, I imagine we will ally with people and probably try to help out in that way. But would we ever get above 20 or 30 members? Probably not.
Okay.
It would be my guess. But I do think we would ally. I think I'll do things with other guilds too. Richie and Rive and them and Genesis, I've already done some stuff in PAX Day and things like that. But we'll be a small group of people. I just also current, with you, like my schedule gets really crazy at times with what I do. And so, I think if I try to get into a super high competitive guild, like I'm actually kind of doing them wrong because there's no way I can offer the time that they will need from me. So I've come to peace with some of that. So.
Yeah, it always sucks having to do that, having to admit those things. You're like, well, this is the world we live in now. Being a father, and you got one of them real life big boy grown up adult jobs and all that stuff. Okay, So is there anything that you, Dr. Fantimax, Phantom Minix, whatever your name is there anything that you would want to tell my audience, the audience that's watching, where to find you, or just anything in particular? I'm turning the floor over to you. You can say whatever you want to people.
No, I'm part of Theory Forge with Diggs and the legendary Neurotoxin. So we are live every Sunday at 9 p.m. 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. So we do try to hit every Sunday. So that's where you'll find us. Basically anything at Theory Forge, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, all of it at Theory Forge. We have diverse opinions. I think some people, Diggs has played the villain in several story arcs from time to time. So, but it's always fun. So, you can join us there. Other than that, people, if you're new to this game, to this community, I've been a part of several distinct different game communities, really started with EverQuest Next. Well, I guess EverQuest way back, but here recently, EverQuest Next, Chronicles of Illyria, and now Ashes. And
you don't have a good track record.
Oh yeah, well we also had revivals. So yes, that the joke there is, and I apologize to Steven for this. It's like, sorry, but every game we've ever covered has failed. Sorry, Steven. But I would say that anyone that's new to this community, you're joining an absolute badass community. The Ashes of Creation group has been some of the most fun people to meet, work with, interact with. So I think it's going to be a fucking badass time once we get the game here.
I love it. So you guys, I made his Phantom X's name should be clickable on both YouTube or Twitch, no matter where you're watching it. So you don't got to go type his name in or nothing. I made it easy for you. Just click. You can go over there, give him a follow. He's making content for Ashes of Creation. I make content for Ashes of Creation. If you're new here and you're just now showing up, I appreciate everybody who came in and listened to this conversation. I don't know if it's the most exciting conversation, but I was enthralled by the idea of just that the idea that your personality could affect your class in any kind of way, or your class choice. And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, my God, my personality just is dead on with what I always select. So anyways, I appreciate you guys all coming and hanging out and watching and talking to us, and all the comments and the follows and all that stuff. You guys are awesome. Make sure you guys go follow Phantom X. We are going to go over and raid Wolfheart FPS. He's a good buddy of mine, big Baldur's Gate 3 guy. He is currently playing Dragon Age Inquisition, which is a bad idea, but he can do that. So we're going to go over there and raid him. So you guys make sure to throw all the Zillion emotes into the chat when we get over there. So anyways, I appreciate all you guys. Thank you. And we'll be back next week. Oh, Friday night. This coming Friday night, me and Dr. Burns live right here on this YouTube channel, 8 o'clock Central Standard Time, talking everything about the AMA, everything that's going on. And then Saturday is my 44th birthday. I'll be live. You guys come hang out and we'll do. Well, I think we're gonna go review all my old shit YouTube videos from 4 years ago and make fun of how bad I was at it. So looking forward to seeing y'all guys then. See y'all next time.